Privyet and welcome everybody gathered here at the conference room of our Pearson partner Language.Prosveshcheniye. My name is Andrzej Waguta, I work for Pearson, and I would like to introduce Marek Jedryka, our teacher trainer, digital delivery manager who's been involved in creating digital materials for Pearson for many years. I can't imagine a better person who can show you in a proud way what Pearson has prepared for you, materials you can work with your students. And Ania Paczepajewa, I'm sure you know, author, teacher trainer, she will be talking later on about national exam. Yes. Marek, over to you.
Thank you very much, and здравствуйте. Меня зовут Марек, но я говорю по-русски только немножко, потому что я делаю много ошибок. Мы будем с вами разговаривать по-английски. Да? Готовы? Okay. After this very short introduction in Russian, I can't really say much more than that. Let's begin with the topic of today's presentation, which is your way in teaching with technology. Actually, teaching with technology is not as new as we can sometimes think about it, because when I started teaching, and it was actually last century in the 90s, we already had the idea of teaching with technology, but perhaps in a slightly different way, because I am sure that each of you, if you taught at that time, used, for example, a cassette player, or perhaps an old-fashioned TV, or sometimes, you know, if you were lucky, and at that time it was quite hard, but when I was a university student at the beginning of the 90s, some of the teachers would take us to a special computer lab for a special class, and that would happen like once a semester or something. But these days it has obviously changed, and everybody has got a mobile device, and it can be done in a very, very different way. And we have met today in order to show you that, well, as teachers, we have quite a few so-called pain points. That is, you know, little things that bother us and things that we would like to improve, and things that are biting us. And I'm going to show you, I hope today, that technology, especially Pearson technology, can actually help you with those little pet hates that you have in the process of teaching and in the process of learning for the students as well. So let's start with the beginning, of course, because I'm sure some of you teach in private language schools or universities or in state schools, but wherever you teach, when the students first come to the school at the beginning of the year, even before you start teaching them, there's one thing that we all have to solve. There's one issue that we all have to solve, and this is placement. We have to decide how we are going to divide our students into different groups so that they study with mates who are at the same level. And of course, you can do it in the traditional way. That is, you can give them a paper test, ask them to sit down for 45 minutes, write the test, then you take it, you correct it, and if you have enough time and enough resources at the school, you will probably take this student to an interview and then put the results all together, and you would be able to decide what level your student is. Is this the way you normally do it? Yeah, okay. Now, if this is a bit of a problem because of the time it takes, because of the problems that you may have with the reliability of the test, then Pearson has an interesting suggestion, and this is called Pearson Placement Test. And Pearson Placement Test is actually an English test, or a test in English, that is delivered fully automatically, which means that all you have to do is ask your student to sit in front of a computer, switch it on, start the test, and after about 30 minutes you will know everything about that person in terms of his or her English skills. Please notice that on the slide it says that the scores that a student will be getting will be for writing, reading, grammar, and vocabulary. And next year, we are also going to have the possibility to test the students' speaking skills. Now, this may be surprising because you all probably know that it isn't very difficult for a computer to test such skills as grammar, reading, listening, but writing? How can a computer check a student's writing? Well, we did a lot of research. We worked with many scientists and technical staff in order to prepare an algorithm according to which a computer is actually able to recognize and to assess and to evaluate a student's piece of writing. And believe it or not, we have done a lot of research, and it turned out that the ratings of the computer are almost 100% correlated with human raters. So it is, in fact, a very, very reliable test delivered absolutely automatically in about 30-35 minutes. Another thing about the test which is interesting is that it is fully adaptive. Now, the fact that it is adaptive means that once the candidate sits in front of the computer and begins to do the test, the computer will automatically and very quickly recognize the general level of the candidate, and the questions that will follow will be just adjusted to the responses that the student gives at the beginning. Okay, some of the tasks in the test are similar to the tasks that you normally give your students at various tests. So they can be given a multiple choice test or fill the gaps test and so on. But some of the tasks are really interesting, and here is one which is probably different from what you normally do with your students. I know the print is small, but I hope you can see that the idea is to read the passage, and then after about 30 seconds the passage will disappear and you will have to rewrite it in your own words in about 90 seconds. So this is one of the writing tasks that we have. So it is in a way quite predictable what you will write, but at the same time it is quite an interesting way of testing students' writing skills. There's another task that you can see on the screen at the moment, and this, as you see, is a listening task. So you are supposed to listen to the recording and then type the sentence exactly as you hear it, which you may think is easy if your level of English is really advanced, but if someone's level of English is much lower, it is not easy. If you ask me to write down a sentence that you say in Russian, I would probably run away. Okay, so that's another task that we have. Now, another thing which you may find very interesting is the way we actually present the results. Because if you want to present the results, you can do it in a couple of ways, of course. But we invented a very precise numerical scale, which is called Global Scale of English, or GSE for short. Some of you may have heard about it. It is a scale that corresponds or is correlated to the Common European Framework of Reference, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, right? So you know the division into A1, A2, B1, B2. But then if you think about it, although it is very, very helpful to be able to say that a student is B1, it is in fact very imprecise. It is difficult to define what specifically it means. In other words, you can be B1 for 1 year, maybe for 2 years, for some students even for 3 years, which in fact is very demotivating. Because if you come to a language school and they take you to a course and you study the language for a year, and at the end of the course they say, okay, you have done 120 hours and you have progressed, of course, but what's your level? You're B1. What was your level when you started? B1. So what's going on, right? And this diagram that you can now see actually shows it very well, because if you look at the students are the red numbers, okay? So it's like student 1, student 2, and student 3, the red numbers. And if you look at student 1 and student 2, what level are they? A2. Are they the same? I mean, is their knowledge of English the same? If you understand the metaphor of the slope, right, running up as your kind of learning curve. Of course not. I mean, student 1 probably knows a lot less than student 2, but still we tend to say that they are both A2. But then there is another situation between the problem with students 2 and 3, because they are on two sides of the fence, you can say, right? But even though number 2 is at the A2 level and number 3 is B1, in fact, they have a lot in common and their knowledge of English is almost the same. So this is why we came up with a numerical scale which is from 10 to 90. You know, metaphorically, you could say that this is like a thermometer. So measuring your level of English is a little similar to measuring your temperature. Yeah? So your temperature is normally 36 unless you're ill, right? Or 36.6. Now, using this scale, we are able to tell our students very precisely where they are with their English. So we can tell them, you know, your level of English, at least, or for a particular skill such as writing, is, for instance, 36. Or your level of English as far as speaking goes is 42. Okay? And the reason we invented this is to be able to describe the level precisely, and also because we wanted to be able to motivate the students with this kind of approach. How can we motivate the students with GSE? Well, in a very simple way, because we can show them within a year or even within a semester that they have progressed, for example, from 40 to 42. They may still be A2, but they have progressed 3 points, 4 points perhaps. So you can report the results in the traditional way. You can, of course, report the results in a modern way. But then once the results are reported and the students are placed into the groups according to the level they know English, then there is another thing that is usually biting us, and this is how can we very objectively, very precisely test their progress. And again, you can go for option 1 and do it in the traditional way. So ask them to come to a lecture hall like this, perhaps, and then ask them to fill in a paper test. Or you have option number 2, and you can ask them to sit in front of the computer and give them what we call Pearson progress test, which is in a way similar in the way it works to Pearson placement, because it is also a fully automatic test, which means that again the student sits in front of the computer and takes the test, which lasts 40, 45, sometimes 50 minutes, because again it is adaptive, which means that for some students, the computer may need a little bit more time to evaluate the progress. For some students, the computer may need less time. And now, the most interesting thing about progress, I think, is the fact that in addition to reading, writing, grammar and vocabulary, it is capable of assessing a student's speaking skills. So the student will be asked to wear headphones and to speak to the computer. The tasks will be a little similar to the writing tasks that you saw before. That is, for example, you will see a passage for about a minute, and then the passage will disappear, and your job will be to retell the story in your own words. So again, it's kind of predictable. So it's not impossible for the computer to predict what kind of words the person is going to use. Of course, it's really amazing once you do it, and you do it with your students, and you see how it works, and you see how reliable it is, how it really, really measures their progress. It is really, really amazing. Now, in this case, it is a package. The test is a package. So each year, the idea is that a student gets a package of 3 tests to measure his progress, depending on where the student starts. So first you give the student this placement test, and then according to the result of the placement test, you will be able to recommend a particular level of the progress test. And then once the progress test is chosen, the idea in which it is used is illustrated in the slide. So after placement, after a couple of weeks, the students are asked to take the first progress. Why? Well, because we want to be able to compare what they know now with what they will know when the first semester ends. So I said, you know, each set consists actually of 3 parts, and this slide illustrates how it works. So the first test happens at the beginning of the semester, then there is a period of study. For example, I don't know how long a semester here would be, but normally it's about 4 or 5 months. And after that, in the middle of the course, you give your students the second progress test. And then they study for another period, and then they take the last progress test. And to present the results, again, you could do it the traditional way. You could say B+, or I know that in Russia you have the numbers, numerical scale from 2 to 5. So you would say, okay, you are 4+. But now if you give the student this kind of information, they will just know that they are good, or they are good plus. But what does it mean? I mean, do they know all the tenses? Or do they know all the tenses you have studied with them? Do they know 80% of the vocabulary you have done with them? Or do they know 75% of the vocabulary you have done with them? So if you go for option 2 and give them the results from progress, from Pearson progress, they will have very, very precise information that you can see on the slide right now. I know the print is small, but I will explain. Of course, on the left, there's a list of students, and then on the right, you can see first the students' overall results, which means that you can see what student 1 got for the beginning of the semester test, the middle of the year test, and the end of the year test. Well, in this case, student 1 didn't take the last test. But the most interesting information is, of course, the numbers, which are GSE numbers, Global Scale of English Numbers. And you can see that student 1 has progressed from 36 to 39. But there's a lot more information for you and for the student, because you will be able to see the progress for each skill that is tested: reading, listening, speaking, and writing. Okay? Of course, you can do it manually, you can do it on paper, but it's much more convenient and it's much more objective, it's much more reliable to do it with the help of the computer system. There's more information that you can get from this gradebook, from this table. For example, if you look at, well, if you just look at the colors, then there are 2 that kind of stand out. Which ones? Red and green. Now, red probably means a warning, yeah? You're just showing that this is someone whose level of English is lower than the rest of the students. So you can see that probably this student is either not working hard enough or should not really be in this group. Maybe the student should be studying in another group with lower level students. Now, there's another color that is outstanding, and it is green, because there's only one student who is all green. It's Kevin Johnson on this list. And you can see that, you know, it's either a very able student, because he is making progress from 45 to 55, which is 10 points on the scale, which is quite substantial. Or maybe this student is also slightly higher and should be studying in a group with a slightly higher level students. So you can see all this information on the GSE scale, but if you want, you can switch to the CEFR scale, the Common European Framework scale, and compare the students' levels against this A1, A2, B1, B2 scale. So, to sum up the information about progress, we can say that, first of all, it's automatic, but it also measures all skills, including speaking and writing. The results will be reported on the GSE scale, which means that the information is going to be very, very precise. And the student is also going to get a kind of a personal report with all the scores, but in addition to that, with the information what he should still work on. All right, so there's this kind of formative feedback that we are giving in addition to this numerical information. The two tests, the Pearson placement and Pearson progress tests, all sit on one platform together with other solutions that Pearson has developed. The platform is known as My English Lab, and I know that some of you who are sitting here and some of you who are watching us on the internet are probably familiar with it, because I know that a lot of teachers in Russia are already working with this platform. But we would like to show you a little bit about it if you haven't been involved with the platform yet. So the general idea of it is that it is a blended learning approach. That is an approach in which you teach your students and you deliver your lesson in class, and then when the students go home, I always say that homework should kind of follow them. And where do they go after school? Well, I mean, they may go to a bar or to meet a friend, but sooner or later they'll all end up in front of their computers, right? This is how it works. At least this is how it works with my children and a lot of children that I know, my friends and my colleagues' children. So they go online. So this is why we want homework to follow them and to be online as well. And they can practice their language online, and then the teacher can see what they are doing, can see what they have done, can see how well they are doing, and he or she can tailor the next class to what is happening with the homework. So this is how it works. This is an exercise which I hope you are all familiar with, right? This is the kind of exercise that we always give our students. So if you have a course book, such as Speak Out Intermediate or My Language Leader, you usually have the course book and the workbook. And here we decided to place the workbook online so that it can go with the students, it can go home with the students, right? So when they come home, they can open the exercises that you assigned, and, well, what they have to do, they have to fill them in. So I have filled it in the way a student would, right? So I made some mistakes on purpose, and for example in 1B that's true, but well, it's a mistake, find it is of course wrong. So when they fill the gaps in, all they have to do is hit a submit button, and within a couple of seconds the system will automatically correct the homework, right? Will automatically tell them which responses are correct, and they will be in green, and which are incorrect, and they will be in red. Of course, there will also be the score. But it's not just, you know, what's correct, what's incorrect, because these days, you know, as the 21st century, it's not very impressive, really. A lot of systems can do that. So Pearson went a step or two steps further. because in addition to this information, what is right and what is wrong, we also give our students more feedback. So if your answer is wrong, you can check the hint. So you can see a little speech bubble next to the red responses. And if you click on the speech bubble, some information such as this will appear. So for example, here it tells you, look, find has irregular past forms. So you look at it and you go, ah, that's right, I should remember that, right? But if your response is, we sometimes want to reassure the students, so we also give them some positive reinforcement by saying, well done, we use past simple for finished actions with a time reference, right? And of course, there's the score that the student can see and the teacher can see. Now, the teacher and the student, they can see a lot more, because My English Lab is not just about doing exercises online instead of paper, because it's the gradebook which is rich with information about the students. So you get the information about the students' general results, but again, this is color-coded, so you can see the green students and the red students. And if you are interested in one student, because apparently Anya is not doing very well, you can drill down to her results, and you will be able to see that perhaps it isn't as bad as you thought, because she has done quite a few exercises well, but it's just 2 or 3 which she's having problems with. So if you want to have a look at the exercises that are problematic for her, you click on the preview and you will be able to see, so this is what Anya's problems are, right? Well, this looks like a lot of work, because, you know, you have to go to the gradebook, you have to find the students who are not doing well, you have to click on their names, you have to look for the exercises. So, of course, the system can do much more for you than that. In addition to the information that you have about the mistakes of individual students, there is something else that you can do. You can just at one click of the mouse generate what we call a common error report, which is a report that looks like this. It's small print again, but I will explain for those of you who are not sitting very close, and I'm not sure about those who are watching it on the internet, but let me explain. In this report, on the left, you can see which items the students are actually having problems with. So, for example, they are having problems with is living against lives, right? They still don't know the difference, probably. How do we know that they don't know the difference? Well, because we can see here that there's at least 6 in the group. So if you have a group of 12, you can see that half of the group don't know the difference, probably. You can also check it with other responses if it is confirmed. And another interesting thing that you can see in the Common Error report is the list of names. So you have precise information about who is having what problems. So this can inform your team. In fact, if you want to, you will be much better prepared for the following lesson, because you know what your students are, what is biting them, what their pain points are. Okay, in addition to that, we have more information, the so-called Diagnostic Board, where you can check how much time they spend doing the exercises. So, for example, if you want to talk to the students' parents, who are unsatisfied with their children's results, you can take them to this diagnostic board and show them. Well, you can say, please look, this is my diagnostic board, and you can see that your Ivan is not, spending a lot of time doing his homework. Look, there are other students in the group, such as, I don't know, Masha or Anya, and they are spending a lot more time, so this is why perhaps he's having problems. Once again, all these solutions that we are discussing live in one house, and the door to this house is My English Lab. So if you get a login to My English Lab, and as a teacher, you can get a free login so that you can test it and see how it works and so on. You can check how placement works, how progress works, how online workbooks work, how My Grammar Lab works, which is still another project in which you get a lot of grammatical exercises to use with your students, or for the students to use them individually, and they can be automatically corrected like everything else in My English Lab. Okay, so much for homework, which nobody likes, but we still know that it is good and we have to give it. If you have students who would like to have digital course books, because before we talked about digital workbooks, but if you wanted your students, or if you wanted to have digital course books, you can also download a free application which is called eText, and then you can purchase access to particular titles. So once you get it, it will look like this, which some of you might be familiar with, and it is of course a digital bookshelf. So if you want to use one of the books, you can use it with your students. You can use it if they have computers or if they have tablets, and if they want to bring them to the class, then it's obviously possible. Or you can even use it if you have some students who are doing lessons with you in kind of distant education format, right? So if you have a student in Kazan, right, then you can also use this course book that is called eText, or on the eText platform. So here is how it works. Well, it is one of our titles, Gold Experience, and please notice that this isn't just a simple book, right, with the text only, but it is a book that is rich in multimedia, such as, for example, recordings or video. Some of the books even have interactive exercises, and the audio and video players are also kind of smart video players, smart audio players, with which you can do quite a lot. So let me now switch to an online version of the course book, and I will show you how it works. So here is Gold Experience, for example, Unit 3, and of course you can use the Zoom tool to read the exercises or read the text, but in addition to that you have some extra tools. For example, if you go to Media and Games tab and to the audio bank for Unit 3, scroll down a little and choose one of the tracks. Let me choose another one. Okay, here is the audio player. So obviously what you can do is play the audio. So one of the functionalities you can already see is the text is highlighted. So as the dialogue develops, you can see which contribution is being played. And in addition to that, you can do something else. Of course, you can hide the script if you don't want to see it, or if you don't want your students to see it. But you can also choose which characters you want to switch off, for example. So in this case, I switched Jacob off so that I can have a kind of a conversation with Jacob, okay? So I'm beginning once again. And I am Jacob. Did you have a good holiday, Grace? Where did you stay? Okay, so quite useful if you have an ambitious student who wants to practice like this. In addition to that, we have the video player. So there's some video to go with the course. What you can do is switch the subtitles off and watch it without subtitles, or you can switch them back on. So they are off, they are on. So it's in a way quite smart. Okay, let's continue. Back to the slides. Okay, if you are interested, or if your students are interested, if you can motivate your students to be interested in reading literature, English literature or world literature, in a simplified version. I'm sure you're familiar with graded readers. I know that reading for pleasure and so on in Russia is very popular. So a lot of the readers are now available in a digital format too. So if you choose your title, such as, for example, Tom Sawyer, which you can purchase in our Language 360 online bookshop, all you can do is download a reader, which is an application that you install on your computer or on your tablet. And this is how it works again. You can see your titles on your bookshelf. So Tom Sawyer is actually one of them. And when you open it, again, you can read it, or you can listen to it, or you can do both things at the same time. So once again, let me switch to the reader here. And I'm reading Tom Sawyer, and I'm also playing the recording. Okay, you can also see that some of the words in the book are in blue. And these are the words that perhaps need a little bit of attention because they might be slightly higher level than the rest of the words in this reader. And for this reason, at the back of the book, you will have a list of words that appeared in blue in the text of the book. And they will be illustrated with examples. And if you click on the word, it will take you back to the page where it appears. So this is also kind of helpful if you want to use graded readers for educational purposes. Okay, we have been talking about things that are for the students and, well, of course, also for teachers. But we have more things that are specifically designed to help teachers. And, you know, I don't know how it is with you, but when I look at some of your bags, they look kind of heavy and big, and you're probably carrying a lot of materials in them. I used to do the same because I have been teaching for 20 years now. But recently it has been less and less because I have a tablet, I have a computer, and I can actually have everything that I need for my courses on the computer. And if you are using Pearson courses, we decided to offer you a solution that is called ePanel. And I dare say all you need is love and ePanel. Because on ePanel, you actually get access to everything you need from the course book, through the workbook, to the recordings and extra materials. And some of you are nodding, which I assume means that you are already using it. So if you are, you can share this information with your colleagues that all you have to do is again download this application from our website, and then you need to register and get confirmed, right? Our representatives will confirm you that you are a real teacher, and then you can request access to Speak Out, to Cutting Edge, to Total English, and if we know that you are using it, you will be able to get access, and this is what it looks like, which means that once you download this application on your computer, you get access to a particular course book and all its materials, and you can download whatever you need, so that later on, when you go to a class which is somewhere else where you don't really have access to the internet, for example, in the classroom, you can use it offline. So once you download it on your computer, you will be able to use it offline. So I think this is quite helpful, especially when it comes to multimedia, because again, we started this session with, you know, a short discussion about a cassette player as an example of using technology in the 20th century. But now, of course, you don't even need to take your MP3 player with you, because you can play the recordings that go with the book from your computer, from ePanel. Sometimes I know students want to have contact with native speakers. I'm sure this is the case with you, and this is probably also one of your desires. At least I know I am not a native speaker, so I would like my students to have some contact with native speakers, so that they experience it, so that they see what it's like, so that they are not surprised when they finally go to an English-speaking country. And for this, we prepared another service which is called Pearson Online English. Pearson Online English, which is a service for the students. So if your students get access, they will be able to choose what topics they are interested in. They will be able to take a test, a kind of placement test, so that we can decide at which level they are and where we should take them. And once they do that, some materials will be prepared for them. And again, I would like to show you how it works online. So I will go back to the browser. And show you the real website. Well, if you look at this website here, you can see that I am logged in. And I can go to my practice materials, which are Real Media, Grammar Guide, and my word bank. I would like to show you how Real Media work. Well, as you can see here, you have a selection of materials, topical materials, which are usually some recent news. Of course, they are grouped according to subjects. So, for example, if you are interested in, I don't know, business English, then you will have a different selection. If you are interested in technical English, you will still have a different selection. But you can search for whatever you want to find over here. So, for example, if you want some latest news about your president, and you click search, you get quite a lot of interesting materials, right? About how Putin welcomes Trump as anxious world confronts new reality, unveils new statue, and so on. I will show you how those mini lessons work for your students, but I will focus on videos, because I think videos are a little more popular with students. And one of the videos is actually about running a startup, that is, you know, starting a business company and then running it. And here is what the mini lesson is like. So the title is The Pressure of Running a Startup. Please notice that the material comes from quality sources. So the material comes from such agencies as Bloomberg, for example, or such news companies as Financial Times. By the way, Financial Times used to be part of Pearson, but it was recently sold because Pearson wants to focus purely on education. But we're still in good contact. This is why we have a lot in common. So what is the lesson all about? Well, this is a listening activity. The idea is to watch and learn, and they tell you what to do. Watch the video, then read the question and choose the correct answer. I think it is time for us to watch the video. Yeah, please notice what happens. It plays an extract and then it stops so that you can think about the response to the question. So again, it's really graded. It's all natural English. It is all real recording, right? It's not adjusted, but it is prepared in such a way that the students can deal with it, okay? Which response do you know? Did anybody listen carefully? Let's try number 3. Wrong. Still wrong. Okay. And then it goes on, but there is another feature that you can use. There's a little tortoise here. Okay, what do you think this tortoise means? Yeah, perfect. So you can slow it down, okay? It sounds a little artificial, but then if you're really, you know, struggling with English, if I can imagine if someone is struggling with a foreign language the way I am struggling with Russian now, for example, then it might be useful. You know, that's the word I now recognize. It's like you almost hear each individual sound, okay? Of course, in addition to the video and the mini lesson, you can access the word list, of course, when you finish the lesson, so it isn't available now. But this is not everything as far as Pearson Online English is concerned, because this way your students will have some kind of contact with native English, but it isn't really the same as, you know, speaking face-to-face with a real speaker of English from Great Britain or New Zealand, right? So there is another possibility, and this is called tutoring here. So if you click on tutoring, you can actually join a group session online with a real teacher, but the teacher will just be on the screen. But it's a real teacher, a native speaker. Well, you can see that this is very popular, because at the moment, the sessions which are for the 17th, is it today, the 17th? Yes, okay. So the sessions for today are already fully booked. The session is full, so you have to, you know, book it a little bit in advance. Quite a few sessions are booked. Okay, here is one for tomorrow for the evening at 8:30 on travel. And you can reserve a seat and take part in this session. As you can see, it's going to take half an hour, and they can be up to 8, sometimes 10 students in the session. So a very interesting way of making contact with a real native teacher. The idea here, of course, is not to replace you, is not to replace us, but the idea is to facilitate what we are doing, to give our students more exposure to English than they get once a week or twice a week when they come to the classes, right? Okay, let's return to the presentation again. And sometimes when we talk about, just a second, there we go. Okay, sometimes when we talk about all the developments in technology that Pearson has created, teachers ask me if there's anything that we do not have. So if I were to answer this question, I would say, okay, I wish we also had very fast cars, such as this one, but this is not our mission, right? Our mission is to change people's lives through learning, through education. We believe we can make influence on people's lives through learning. So this is why, because testing is a part of learning, I'm going to give you some heads up so that you know what we are working on and what else you can expect from Pearson very soon. One of the things that students, well, not so much students, that teachers have been asking for is a system in which they could generate tests according to a set of criteria. So imagine you want to give your students a test, for example, connected with the course book that you are using. It might be, for instance, Focus. Is anybody teaching from Focus? Not yet. Okay, there's one person at least, and there might be some more watching us on the internet. So if you are teaching from Focus or another course book that is a Pearson title, you can go into the test generator when it is ready, of course, because it isn't ready yet. And then say that, okay, I'm teaching from this course book. I am now working with my students on level 1 and, for example, unit 2. So that will be your first criterion. And then you can say, okay, and the area that I want to test is actually grammar. Oh, we like testing grammar, don't we? Of course. So I want my students to show that they can distinguish between present simple and present continuous. So you click on these two tenses and you go further. Or if you even teach from another course book, right? Or you teach from your own materials, or you teach in a state school where you have the books which are provided by the state. Again, if you want to prepare a test, you can just select the level, for example, using the CEFR, the Common European Framework Scale. So you can say, okay, I want the test to be between A2 and B2. Maybe that's too wide, but you can also use the new scale, the GSE scale, right, the Global Scale of English. And you can then decide again which test area you want to test with your students, and then there's one magic button, generate. And when you hit it, guess what? A ready test appears, right? So the test which has been prepared, which has been selected from a large database of items that Pearson has, and that were selected randomly, but according to the criteria that you decided to use. And this is a little bit like going to an internet shop with shoes, right? Do you ever buy shoes online? No? Shoes, so what do you buy online? Jackets. Okay, so if you want to buy a jacket online, then you will go to a clothes shop, right? And then they will also ask you to narrow down your criteria. So you'll say, okay, I want a jacket. Okay, a men's jacket or a woman's jacket? A woman's jacket. What color? Navy blue. Okay, what size? 42. Okay, and then according to the criteria, they will present you with a list of jackets from which you will be able to choose. And this is what we are trying to do. Of course, it's a metaphor, right? But this is what we are trying to do with testing items, so that you can have your own selection. There will be more functionalities in this tool, but it's too soon to describe all of them, because this is very much work in progress. So this is something that me and my team, for example, are now working on. And of course, this isn't the only thing, but we're running out of time, so we would need probably another meeting to tell you about all the things that we are working on, that we are preparing. But I hope that after this very short seminar in which you are taking part today, you're kind of getting more convinced that it's not so difficult, it's not so hard. In fact, it is easy to find your way of teaching with Pearson technology. Pearson technology that includes solutions and responses to all kinds of pain points, such as placement, such as objective measurement of progress, such as more frequent contact with native speakers, such as the possibility to use a book line on your mobile, your book or your reader on a mobile device. So I'm going to finish with this, but I can promise that we keep working, we keep developing new solutions for you and for your students, because, as I said before, our mission is to change people's lives through learning. Thank you very much for taking part in this presentation, everybody, not only those of you who managed to come over here, but also to everybody who is listening to us attentively on the internet. Thank you very much. Большое спасибо.